Just doing a video here. Last one was about putting the drop spindles on the front of the car. That's a 1974 VW Beetle. I was going to do for most of the late 60s and 70s, but I wanted to also talk about the rear. Since now my ride height is completely changed, on the front is lowered, the rear was still sitting at stock, so I had a heck of a rake on it, and I'm having to reduce the swing arm on the rear to make sure that I can get this car to ride level. Just want to do a quick overview. When you have your car set up originally, you're going to look a lot like this. Okay, I still have the stock drum set up, so you don't have to take as much apart as you would think. So we'll go on the other side and show you, but on this side I learned some things. You only have to take off the top of your shocks. Only took off the top bolt, because what you're going to do is you're going to swing this whole assembly down and out of the way so that you can get to your torsion bar in here. So there's a nut and bolt here. These are 19 millimeters if I remember right. These are also 19s, and I can't remember what these are, but we'll look on the other side. So to start off, what I did was jacked this up, put a jack under, which I'll show you on this side. So we can walk through it. First thing I did was take that shock off here. I left this in a little bit because it's controlling my my rear bumper on the Manx, but you don't have to really do that on the stock version. I took it off, let the shock drop. After that, I came back, took off these. There's 4 of them, and they are a 15 millimeter. And they're tapered ends. That should help you get them pegged back in once you put this plate back on. You're going to see this sitting here, and inside is a rubber gasket. I do recommend replacing these if you haven't in a while. These are relatively new, and keep in mind when you do get into this, they do have a marker on here that lines up to a small little hole on the inside to line up. It's a circle. I don't know why they put a marker in it, but that's where it's at. So once you loosen these 15 millimeter bolts, I just pried this off a little pry bar, inched it off till it eventually came free. To put this back on, I ended up coating it on grease on the other side to help it slide on, and it worked well. So I've taken the shock off. I've taken this off. I came back here and loosened these up, which were 19 millimeters. One thing to pay attention to on these, the bolt is coming from the other side. Do not hit these out with a hammer once you get that nut off. You have to line up the flat spot on one of your bolts in line with the swing, because if you don't and you go on a point, it's such a tight tolerance here, you're never going to get it out. So you should be able to line this up, get it lined all of a sudden, so the flat part of it is right here, get lined up right there, and you should be able to just pull it out. So you go hitting it on a corner, you're going to scratch it up. So I just loosened these first. Okay, that gave me a good point. Used a pry bar on it. A little cheetah bar I have right there to make sure it came off. Once they were loosened, then I came back, and this is an IRS, so I removed just the outer. Okay, took the bolts, loosened them up, have them still sitting in here, loosen it up and swing it up and tied it off with a little rope. Put a bag over this that just protects this grease in here. I'm going to pack it again once we get done, but I don't want to have that collecting dirt and everything while I'm working. So now I've got here, this done, these loosened, and this off. Then I came back and put a jack underneath the bottom and jacked it up just a little bit. What I'm trying to do is take that tension off of this in here so that those bolts, when you do push them out, they come out freely. If you don't, you're going to have 2 of them come out easy, and then whatever that third one is going to get pegged. So get it jacked up, push them out. Once they're out, I removed the jack and swung this whole system down. You have to be careful here, okay? I have a little block under here just to keep the height, because you are going to be stretching that brake line. You don't want to put too much tension on that brake line. If you break that, next thing you know, you're bleeding the brakes and getting a new brake line. So once This was swung down. This gives me access to my torsion. Okay, there's a lot of force on here, especially on ride height, original ride height. What I did was get a pry bar and just slightly, and I said slightly, stuck it under here and pried it out till it was close to the edge. Okay, I do not recommend grabbing this and pulling it all the way off, because you do, even though this thing's only going to move a couple inches at most, that's a lot of force sitting in here holding up the back of this car. It's going to throw your tool and could cause injury. So what I do is I just inch this out until I'm pretty close to this catch right here, and then use the almighty and wonderful pickle fork. This thing always comes in handy. So I got the pickle fork. I'll stick it back behind here, give it a few swings, and it pops this arm from about here to about here. Once that tension's off, it gets a lot easier. This bar in the back has two sets of splines. They're numbered differently, meaning the outside has 44 teeth, the inside has 40 teeth. So 44 and 40. Reason the difference is that's going to allow you to adjust the ride height very specifically. If you do one turn on the inside, it equals about 2.38 inches. So if I just want to ride this, of course, lower, if I pull out the inner spline, rotate it up, one tooth, and push it back in, it's going to give me about 2.38 inches lower. If I pull just the outer and leave the inner still connected, pull it out, and adjust it up one, then it's going to go up about 2.5 inches. Reason the difference is, if you want to really fine tune it, you can pull the inner one out, move it up one, pull the outer one out, move it down one. You can see you can start subtracting and minusing to get that exactly where you want to. Now, in this case, they always say you want to mark this before you do any kind of tension relief. Now, mine's pegged. It makes not a difference for me. That's not going to give me anything other than I know there's torsion in here. So what I'm going to do is hit this off. Once it swings down, I have an electronic angle finder. Now, what I'll do is once it swings down, I'll peg it, and it'll give me an angle. Right now, once I take this tension off, it's going to show me about 20.2 degrees. Okay, we're at 10.1, but we're pegged, so we really don't know what that angle is. I'm going to about 20. I'm going to move it up one inner spline for 2.38 inches up, and then it's going to go from about 20 degrees to about 10.8, 10.4, somewhere around there. This gets me pretty close. It's a plus or minus of about 0.2. It's good enough for what I'm looking for, and then I can always come back and do this again once these bolts are loosened. I can adjust the ride height as I need to. So I'll get a pickle fork in here. Let's see if this will come loose for me while I'm here. Got a pickle fork on the back side. Okay. Now you notice once I hit it with the pickle fork, we had that jump. Okay. Before I was sitting about 10.1 degrees. I'm at 19.2. I'm going to do a little bit of adjustment on this and play with it, because my other side was sitting on the lowest one at about 20.2. So I'm about a degree off, so I've got to work with the inner and outer splines to get that to match up. So once I'm down, this just pulls out. Okay, just get a little pry bar in here, pull this out. Most likely you're going to pull the inner spine out and the whole tube's going to come out, the whole shaft. That's fine. It's usually the one that's the loosest. I'll pull it out, twist it, play with it. Once it's time to put this back together, it's really the reverse. The only thing I know is I put a jack under on this edge, jack it up a little bit so that it will slide back in. Do not hit this directly with a hammer, okay? Get a board, stick stick it, give it a couple of blows. Don't hit directly on there. You don't want to risk chipping or breaking something you don't want to. Push back in and check your height. So then you just do the reverse. Once it's back in, make sure this under that safety is sitting below there. Okay. Put your plate back on. One thing to pay attention before I forget to, the inside of here, there is a rubber gasket. Okay. This does have alignment notches also. You have to get this right or you're never going to get this bar back in. So there's a word like oben is usually written somewhere on the top. These are a little older. That means top. Just make sure that goes on the top. There'll be a notch here, 2 close ones go on the top, and this mat mirrors 2 on the bottom. So you have a large gap between the faces here and a small one here. Make sure those line up before you stick it in. Once it lines up, put the torsion back up, put your plate back on, and then it's just reverse putting everything back together. So hope that guys helped you a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. So just let me know if you got any questions, and have a good weekend.